So there's an outlet called The Undercurrent. I believe that's what it's called. Hold on, give me 1 second and let me... Correct, Undercurrent, it's called. I think they do... I've used them before. They've gotten some interesting videos here and there. Like behind-the-scenes stuff. It's sort of like investigative reporting. That's like independent outlet that does investigative reporting. Anyway, they went to... God bless him for this, because I would never would. They went to a Mo Brooks event. Mo Brooks is a congressman from Alabama. And they ended up getting a story here, which is, in my opinion, a colossal bombshell. Like, this should be big breaking news on all the major media outlets if they took their job seriously and their outrage meter wasn't broken. That's the problem with mainstream media. Their outrage meter is just totally broken. They get like all worked up over stupid things, and like the biggest stories, they're like, yawn. And so that brings us to where we are now. So Mo Brooks tells a story basically about how Washington really works. And I got to be honest with you guys. I mean, I've been doing this for a decade, this show. And one of my top issues is corruption. Like, let's stop the corruption. And this proves to me it's even worse than I thought. Because maybe I should save this for after the segment, but the general idea is everything is implied in D.C. Hey, when I give you a campaign contribution, you look out for me and forget your constituents. Like, first and foremost, represent me, whether it's a billionaire or a corporation, some lobbyist. But it turns out, in some instances, it's not implied. There are like straight up what's called a quid pro quo, which is like, it's almost like it's all vocalized. If I do this for you, you do this for me. Now that is actually illegal. The bar's very high. Like, to prove corruption in our current system is nearly impossible because we've legalized a certain kind of bribery. But according to what Mo Brooks says here, there actually are many instances of legit quid pro quos. And it's like part of how the system works. This is astonishing. Take a look.
Sure that y'all are very much concerned about why our Congress is so unresponsive to the regular needs of American citizens. Why some of these policies that come out are so bizarre, so unfair, so skewered against regular Jane and Joe citizens. The reason is simple. Special interest groups run Washington. And I don't mean that metaphorically, I mean literally. Now, here is how it happens. In the House of Representatives, I'll use that as an example because that's where I work. If you want to be chairman of a major committee, you have to purchase it. And the purchase price for a major committee, say like Ways and Means, minimum bid is $1 million. Now, I'm talking literally here. I'm not talking metaphorically, okay? We have committees broken down by A group, B group, and C group. C are the cheapest, B are the most expensive, are middling, A is the most expensive. It's the most expensive because those are the committees that the special interest groups care the most about. So where does a congressman come up with $1 million to be chairman of one of these A committees? You can't get it from Joe and Jane Citizen because Joe and Jane Citizen back home, they're not going to be contributing that kind of money. They don't have it. They need that money for their own families, okay? So let me finish. And so you have to get it from the special interest groups. And with the special interest groups, there is a quid pro quo. If you don't do what they tell you to do, they won't give you the money that finances your chairmanship. I had one guy who ran for chairman of the NRCC, which is where the Republicans pay their money for these committee assignments and chairmanships, just as the Democrats pay theirs to the DCCC. And this guy who wanted to be chair of the NRCC actually had a brochure. And that brochure had price listings written on it. And his argument for getting elected was, elect me, I will charge you less. Now you understand how the public policy debate is corrupted when, to be in a position of power, you have to do what the special interest groups require, which undermines the public policy debate. The money now is triumph. And I'll give you a second example. So it's not Mo Brooks talking, but there's real evidence to back this up. Congressman Thomas Massey, who, by the way, endorsed me yesterday afternoon. I should add that Rand Paul has also endorsed me from Kentucky. He had a lobbyist come up to him, and the lobbyist said, look, I will pay your $500,000 to be on Ways and Means if you will sponsor this patent bill. Thomas is brilliant. He has patents, MIT grad. And Thomas said, okay, I'll look at it. And he looked at it and said, no, this hurts the small inventor. The people with the power and the money are going to use that power and money to steal the patent rights from the person who actually had the idea, who should be reaping the rewards of that idea. And so Thomas went back to the lobby and said, nope, I'm not going to do it. The lobby said, okay, I'm not going to pay that $500,000. Thomas Massey got that published on the front page of USA Today, that story. And I saw it, and I'm going, finally, somebody else in the House of Representatives who is honorable, who is ethical, and sees the corruption associated with this process. And I went to Thomas and said, thank you for doing that. And Thomas responded, well, I made one big mistake. That looked good to me. He said, well, I talked about it in terms of buying committee assignments, when really it's a original agreement, you have to pay it every 2 years. Now, the national media knows about this. Both political parties do it, so neither party rises to the occasion and makes this a major public policy issue that would increase exposure about what's getting done. But if you want to know why our government is not properly facing the challenges that are in front of the United States of America, that more than anything else is the reason.
Wow. And that guy, by the way, is a Republican, and he's blowing the whistle on this. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm sure if you go to Mo Brooks, his Open Secrets profile, and they track money in politics very closely, you'll see this guy's taking money from all sorts of special interests and lobbyists and corporations and PACs, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, that guy, he brings up Thomas Massey there. Thomas Massey is like the closest current thing in Congress to what Ron Paul was. But Thomas Massey is no Ron Paul. There's famous stories about how lobbyists used to skip over Ron Paul's office and Bernie Sanders' office because they know these guys aren't bendable. Their minds are made up. Like they're not like they're actually ideological in how they function, and I mean that in a positive connotation. Thomas Massey. What's amazing is that story he just referenced, which I, by the way, missed at the time in USA Today. The lobbyist who was in that interaction with Thomas Massey was pissed about the fact that Massey was blowing the whistle on this. So come to find out, that lobbyist comes out a little later on and explains to everybody, and there was another article on this apparently, that actually Thomas Massey, the very week after that, was calling me and asking me to give him more money, and was meeting with me and a bunch of other lobbyists and was asking for more money for doing more fundraising for his campaign. So, in other words, even the guys who blow the whistle are like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the way the system works. Like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? I got to do what I got to do. I got to play ball. So even the guys who are like, this is kind of messed up, are also like, can you please give me some money for my campaign and then I'll serve you? So that's just to give all the facts and let everybody know. But hey, I'm happy he's saying it. I'm happy he's explaining it to everybody. Because again, it's even worse than I realized. And I'm the guy who wrote my college thesis on what's called clean elections, which is getting the private money out of the elections, the corporate money out of the elections, and just basically having a system where it's publicly financed so the politicians can genuinely have, elections where it's competing ideas, where it's like, this is my ideology. Okay, well, this is my ideology. And now let's let the American people choose which one they find better. So what he says is, it costs $1 million to head one of the committees. Now, those committees, by the way, shape all of the policies and all the legislation that eventually gets voted on. So it costs $1 million. Well, like he says, you can't go to Joe and Jane, random person, in order to get that money. It's hard to raise it through small dollar donations. So you just have, some corporation pay for it, and then your main purpose in life now becomes, how do I serve the people who just paid for me to get on this committee? They're number one on your list. So it's $1 million to head the committee. It's $500,000 to be on a committee. And he even says he saw politicians literally shopping around with their price tag saying, look, I'll do more for less. So I'll represent you to the max for even less money. So that's why you should pick me to try to be head of the committee or whatever. It's astonishing. So what we learned is not just that there are quid pro quos, but also, and he explains this clearly, the DNC and NRCC are just corporate money laundering institutions. That's the whole point. The whole point is, let's put a veneer of respectability on what we're doing here and, you know, have a middleman where the corporate money and billionaire money and lobbyist money goes to the DNC and the NRCC, and then they give it to the politicians, and it looks like, well, I took a contribution from the DNC because I have democratic politics, and the DNC is all about democratic ideas. And it's like, no, they are really there to launder the money from, like, you know, Pfizer and Blue Cross Blue Shield and Raytheon and Exxon, fill in the blank with whatever corporations, right? So, guys, it's worse than I realized. And this is why, you know, it's what? Congress always has an approval rating around like 22% or some shit. That's not an accident. That's not an accident. And the American people aren't wrong. Like, they are right to feel that way. People know. There's this gut instinct of like, even if I'm voting, I know I'm always voting for like a lesser evil. This is crazy. So, I mean, look, really, the main answer here to address this specific problem is to end the corruption. Now, that's easier said than done. There's so many different avenues of corruption. You know, there's the revolving door is a big problem as well, which we didn't even touch on in this. Not only are there campaign contributions, but there's the direct investments that politicians make in the stock market. Then they try to boost those stocks that they just invested in. There's so many different avenues of corruption. But really, the way to crack down on this is to try to ban every avenue of corruption. And also, look, treat being corrupt like it's up there with the worst crimes, because it is. Like, it's up there with like assault and robbery and murder. You know, like, I would crack down on it hard because I don't see any other way out of this. Now, that is easier said than done. It would be so difficult to cut off all the different avenues of corruption. Really, to get the money out of the system, you would need like a constitutional convention, which is very difficult. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try all those things, because we should, but there is a way around this. That's what people need to understand. There is a way to address this that's kind of like a shortcut, and that's the idea of direct democracy. So some sort of federal direct ballot initiative where every time you vote for president, you also vote on like the top 5 issues. So if I have so much more faith in the American people than I do in these politicians, it's not even close. Because even if I disagree with Steve down the street, at least I know Steve is not, you know, swimming in cash from Lockheed Martin. You understand what I'm saying? Swimming in cash from Goldman Sachs. So, and look, right-wingers should support this too, because if you guys believe in right-wing ideas, then you feel like, hey, I'll take my chance of being able to convince everybody around me that my belief on whatever issue it is correct. Fair enough. Look, I'll take it. And then let's vote directly on those issues. Let's have a national direct ballot initiative on the idea of $15 minimum wage. Let's have a national direct ballot initiative on the idea of the PRO Act, which is a, you know, pro-union piece of legislation with a whole bunch of different provisions in there. Let's vote nationally on, I don't know, you tell me, a variety of things. Abolishing student debt. That's one that might actually be close in terms of the results. I'll take my chances with the American people. And you know what? If I lose that one, well, maybe 4 years from now or 8 years from now, it'll pop up again on the direct ballot initiative, and we can vote directly on it. That's like, Mike Gravel had this idea, and he said it should be another branch of government, like the people's branch of government. I love that idea. Now, if that's too hard to set up, just do it through a law, and let's do it that way. We have to find a way, because this is why I truly believe that this is one of the main reasons why people are so turned off to politics, is because they might not know the specifics of this, but they have this feeling. It's like this instinct of like, something ain't right. And I'm wasting my time because none of them are representing me anyway. And if you give people a direct say, I think more people will get involved. And so that's the way to go around this, but really we should address it at the core as well with anti-corruption measures. But look, guys, again, it's worse than I thought, and the story is astounding. And of course, you're not going to hear a goddamn word about it on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, any of the nightly news outlets. In a political media environment that wasn't broken, this would be huge news. It would lead to a weeks-long coverage. Well, how are we going to change? We got to change this. This is crazy. These people are betraying us, the American people. They're betraying their voters. This is a cesspool of corruption. But none of them are even going to talk about it. There's not going to be a peep on any of the outlets. By the way, you want to know why? Well, this is one of the main reasons why. The same corporations that are paying these politicians for favors and legislation in their favor are the same corporations that are advertising on mainstream media. And, you know, you can go and read Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent, and he lays out a similar dynamic in detail to understand the way these things work. But there's, you know, the hiring process is where a lot of the decisions get made. They only hire people who they know are not going to rock the boat too much, not going to look too much under the hood. And that's how we get a situation where Wolf Blitzer and Brian Stelter are on air for 1,000 hours a day. And so you're not going to get real news. You're not going to get good information and facts. You're going to get, you know, a very conventional, calm, status quo supporting way of discussing things. And that's where we are. So it's astonishing. It really is astonishing. This should be huge news. And we're going to be like one of the only outlets that talks about it. That's... Oh, man. All right, there you go. That's the video. And I've given a number of things that I think are solutions, but let's sit back and watch as none of them are even tried, because that's where we're at, apparently. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.